And it's time for Ask the Expert here on CTV Morning Live. In today, Auger Hollingsworth. So if you have any questions for a personal injury lawyer, get them to us now. 613-789-6559, extension 2803, ottawa.morning@ctv.ca. You can email them. I'll ask that question on your behalf. Or send us a message on Facebook as well. Our Facebook page is CTV Ottawa Morning Live. Brenda Hollingsworth, a personal injury lawyer, is joining us today. Hi, Brenda. Good to see you.
Hi there. Nice to see you.
Okay, so let's run through some scenarios that are
Sure.
pretty common to your office. The first one, you are cycling along the road and a driver opens his door into your path. You hit the door and then fly over your handlebars. What should you do?
Right, so this dooring is an ongoing problem. The first personal injury case I ever did at our firm 18 years ago was a dooring case. And this week I was talking to a client in a dooring case. So people aren't getting the message. If you open your door into traffic and there's a cyclist, that cyclist is going to be injured. So you're the cyclist. Number one, always make sure you're safe. We did have a tragedy, say 10 years ago, where someone was doored into the road and then killed by traffic. So get to safety. Number two, make sure you're able physically to look after yourself. But assuming you are, do not leave without the information of the vehicle that opened the door. You even if you think you're fine, get that information, because the kind of injuries that you have if you go over the handlebars, maybe you break your collarbone. We see that a lot.
Yeah.
But if we don't, if that's not what happened, if it's not something sort of like a fracture, it's not going to be maybe for 24 hours until you know the full extent. And if that car is driven off, you could be in trouble. So getting that information is key. I would call the police in this instance. There is an infraction related to dooring. You don't have to, they talk about $2,000 in damage and physical injury. You don't actually have to wait for that. You can call the police in this instance, and I would always do that. The other thing that's a bit weird for cyclists is you contact your own car insurance to activate your accident benefits. Right? So if you need physio or income replacement or other medical rehab care, it comes first from your own car. That's
People
strange.
probably wouldn't think to do that.
No, your car's parked in the garage,
Yeah.
but it's your car insurance if you have car insurance, or if you live with someone who has car insurance. It's that car insurance that's going to pay your initial benefits. You're still going to have a claim against the car that hurt you, but there are some things that are paid by accident benefits, and it's your accident benefits. So that's a bit unusual.
Yeah, it is. Not something I think most cyclists would think of.
That's
okay,
right.
The onus then is on the driver, right? To, before they open that door, look to make sure, and look again, it's on them.
100%. Right? Cyclists are allowed to be on the road. You're basically putting an obstruction into the pathway of the cyclist. Now, I mean, cyclists, if you see someone in a car, you might not want to take your chances,
right.
But you don't have an obligation to be looking for that. You might want to for your own safety. It's on the driver. Now, if you have a child in the back seat who opens the door as the driver, you're also going to be responsible for that. It's a bit of a gray area if you have a licensed driver in the back seat who opens the door. Somebody will be responsible. You'll want to get both people's names, and that's where a personal injury lawyer will sort that out.
And this is not only for cyclists, but like those little motorized vehicles, like the little mopeds or the ones you can see that around town, downtown, that you can rent, the scooters.
Yep.
All of that falls into this category?
Yeah, you cannot be dooring anybody. Okay. Yeah, and so anybody would have access to accident benefits, and anyone, because it's a motor vehicle accident,
right.
You'd have accident benefits, and you'd have a lawsuit against the driver who doored you.
Dooring is relatively new, as you mentioned, about 10 years old, and we're seeing more cases. But this is the kind of thing where there's probably things, as you mentioned, if you're the cyclist, you may not know about when it comes to the law. It's not as clear-cut or as obvious as the driving accidents we talk about that, people hear about all the time or have likely been in one. So this is a case where you really want to contact a lawyer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Cyclists are very stoic. And they often don't call us until, 6 months later, they're dragging their leg behind them. And they just don't tend to call for information. Just call for information.
Yep.
You can make your mind up. You can wait and see, but get the information so you don't miss important dates.
Okay.
Like there's a deadline to give notice. There's all of these things that a lawyer will tell you, and then you make your decision.
All right, Brenda, she's sticking around, and if you have any questions for her, now's the time. Get them to us right here. That's how you do it. Phone in or send an email, ottawa.morning@ctv.ca. We will be right back. And we're back with Brenda Hollingsworth today, talking about all different types of scenarios you could find yourself in. And listen, you want to reach out to a personal injury lawyer if you find yourself in one of these scenarios, or even something where you think you may have some questions. If you want to call right now, it's a great time, or send an email. All the information is on your screen for getting in touch with Brenda right now, right here, live on the air. Okay, so we're running through some scenarios that are common in your office. Let's go to the next one. What if you are in a car-on-car collision and you aren't wearing a seatbelt, or in a car-on-bike collision and aren't wearing a helmet? Do you still have a case?
Right. So we see this surprisingly often, especially seatbelt. If there is a fatality, often the person is not wearing a seatbelt. Not always, but it's certainly if somebody's been ejected from the vehicle, it's very unlikely that they're wearing a seatbelt. And with today's vehicles, it's easy for either the police or an accident reconstructionist to tell whether someone had their seatbelt on because of sort of the data that's collected. So let's say you are injured and you weren't wearing your seatbelt. Yes, you still have a case if you weren't at fault for the accident, but your damages might be reduced because you weren't wearing a seatbelt.
Right.
That's called contributory negligence. But it's not automatic. So if you weren't wearing your seatbelt and you broke your arm in the accident because it hit the side door, nothing to do with the seatbelt,
right?
Then there wouldn't necessarily be a reduction. So it's not a punishment.
Okay, interesting.
The defendant has to prove that not wearing the seatbelt contributed to the injuries.
That's fascinating, because I think a lot of people would automatically think, oh, I wasn't wearing a seatbelt, like, case over.
Right, and, or embarrassed to go to the lawyer, or feeling guilty. Be honest with the lawyer, because it would really hurt your case if it came out later that you weren't wearing your seatbelt. Be honest with your lawyer. We know how to work with that. And, I've had many seven-figure cases where someone wasn't wearing a seatbelt. They tend to be very serious cases. But it's definitely possible, but you've got to expect a little bit of a reduction if not wearing the seatbelt made it worse.
And the helmet is the same thing for cyclists?
Yeah, and so the helmet is, helmets definitely have a role to play in head injuries, but we actually rarely see head injuries in our cycling accidents. Most of our cycling accidents are orthopedic.
Okay.
And so if you broke your leg, the defense is going to have a hard time proving that not wearing a helmet contributed to that. I mean, it is possible that somebody could argue that you were trying to protect your head, so you did a weird maneuver, but that would be a lot of steps for a jury to accept before they ding you. The problem with things like helmets and seat belts is if there are credibility arguments, or it's a he said, she said, sometimes defense lawyers will try to wear, or to make you wear your non-compliance with the rules. Well, can we really trust this person? He doesn't even wear a seatbelt. But generally that doesn't get very far. Sometimes we'll have somebody in the passenger seat who is inebriated. He's got a designated driver. He's inebriated. Doesn't put his seatbelt on. It's all sort of part of the package. He's doing the responsible thing, getting a drive home, doesn't put his seatbelt on. That's going to play a role, but it's definitely not game over. So do not exclude yourself. Same thing with wearing, stilettos and slipping outside. Don't write yourself off. There are ways to deal with it. And just to give you an example, in the seatbelt scenario, the law has said, cases have said, that the maximum deduction is 25%.
Okay.
Right? So if your case is worth $1 million and you get a 25% reduction, $750,000 is still worth it, right? Especially you probably need that money. So don't disqualify yourself. Get legal advice. Any qualified personal injury lawyer can tell you about contributory negligence and can give you a sense of whether it's going to have an impact on your case.
It's really remarkable. I mean, now in both of the scenarios we've talked about, there's a lot of things people just wouldn't necessarily know.
Right, and lots of myths and beliefs. Like you believe that you did something wrong, so you believe you don't deserve compensation.
Right.
And that's not how it works.
That's not how it works. Okay, another good case for calling a lawyer. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We've got another scenario coming up next. Stay with us. You're watching Ask the Expert here on CTV Morning Live. Hey, we're back with Ask the Expert, and here's all Brenda's information. If you'd like to reach out to her directly, you can email her, info@ottawalawfirm.ca. Go online and check them out. Give her a call. They've got 2 locations on Woodruff Avenue, another on O'Connor. Give Brenda a call if you're hesitant or you're not too sure about something. You just may have a case. She can help you out with that. We do have a question coming in from Robert. Robert asks, as an individual on long-term disability payments from an accident over 7 years ago, I wonder what happens in the event of death. In that situation, does my spouse continue to get those payments or do they end? Great question.
Right, yeah. And so this is really a lawyer answer. It depends. And so long-term disability can be a lot of different things. If it's long-term disability that you purchase through your employer or individually, let's say through Sun Life or Canada Life or something, you have a contract. And what happens on your death is set out in the contract. Now, sometimes those benefits actually end when you hit 65. Sometimes they end death or 65. Sometimes if you die before 65, there can be like a death allowance to your spouse. But if it's a traditional long-term disability policy, it probably doesn't shift to your spouse.
Okay.
If it's something like Canada Pension Plan disability, that might be different. And so you'd want to look at your situation. Now, sometimes after a significant accident, people have a structured settlement that they think of as a long-term disability policy, and it's similar to one. In that case, sometimes the payments do continue to your spouse for a certain number of years, but you're going to want to look at the documents relating to your policy. So the answer is it depends.
Yeah.
But it's a question that has an answer depending on your specific policy. So the answer should be in there, and you can ask the policyholder to send you the booklet that should have the answer.
Okay, we have one more, so we'll get through this one quickly. You are driving, waiting to make a left turn into a parking lot. A driver in the oncoming direction stops and waves you through. You make that left turn and strike another car that is traveling in the oncoming direction in the curb lane. Who's responsible for that collision?
All right, the wave of death. Yeah, do not do this. Do not wave left turning vehicles through. Do not wave pedestrians across. Don't wave people. Because you will cause an accident. Some of the worst accidents I've seen, people have been waved through.
And that's like people trying to be nice.
Trying
right?
to be nice.
You go ahead, you go ahead. But if you're not following the rules of the road, someone else is coming.
The rules of who has the right of way keep all of us safe.
Yes.
If you mess with those, it's very, very dangerous. So the question is, who's at fault? Probably that left turning vehicle is going to be at fault, right? That wave does not create any kind of change in the rules of who has priority. The other thing I will tell you is that person who waved you through is going to be long gone.
Yeah.
They are not going to stay at the accident scene because they are going to know what they did.
Yeah.
And so the chance of you actually getting to, or they're going to deny it. You're like, oh no, I was scratching my nose. So you're never going to get that evidence. So you're not saved by the wave through. You are creating a situation of danger because you can't see that vehicle. Some places I've seen 2 cars stopped. I've seen someone make a left turn and then not realize that next to the curb is a bus lane. And I've only seen them narrowly miss the bus. Right. But, just don't do it. Don't do it for pedestrians. Don't do it for cyclists. Don't do it for cars.
I know it's a gesture of trying to be kind, but at the end of the day, you're right. It not only creates a potential collision scenario, it also slows down traffic in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Right? The flow of how everything goes.
That's right. The roads are designed a certain way for certain things to happen. Do not kill someone with kindness. It's really, really a bad idea.
Okay.
There's my rant.
It's a good one, though.
Yeah.
Listen, it's a good one. At bottom line, people should contact an injury lawyer if they have any doubt or any suspicion, or maybe even not, even just if they feel secure in how they're handling a scenario, if they're involved in any of these scenarios we discussed. It's still worth putting a question to a lawyer to find out if they've covered all their bases.
Yeah, we offer free consultation to anybody who's had the kind of problem that we handle. Sometimes people call us about, they see us on the show and they call us about something unrelated, and we'll try to give you a referral to someone that can help. But if it's a car accident, if it's long-term disability, if it's a slip and fall, or some other injury that happens, give us a call, and if we can help you, we will, and there's never a charge for a free consultation.
Amazing. Thank you, Brenda. All right, don't forget, you can reach out to Brenda directly, info@ottawalawfirm.ca. Give them a call, check them out online, go see Brenda, ask her your questions.